So the iPhone 14 Pro Max, it's finally here, and today I'm gonna unbox it and I'm gonna compare it to the iPhone 13 Pro Max that has been my workhorse for, well, all since that one was released. I'm gonna take a look at the biggest differences we have between these two phones. I'm gonna point out what I think is the biggest invention so far, but that is for the end of this video. So let's unbox this one. Let's pull off these little tab here. There's no plastic anymore, better with paper than plastic. And here we have this beauty. So the first thing we have is showing you what these little buttons are on the side. It's the same as before. The new cameras looks actually a lot bigger. Yeah, look at those two. Well, that is the main difference. So let's take off this one. Listen. Ooh. It's all black. Let's start this one up. I was afraid that there were no battery in this one, but it seemed to be battery. So while the new iPhone 14 Pro Max is setting itself up and getting cozy inside its new environment, we can just compare the outer. We can see that the logo is actually a little bit bigger on the 14 Pro Max compared to the 13 Pro Max. And as we said before, the cameras are bigger. If we take a look on the sides, we can see that the shiny, high glossy sides, it's still high glossy, but it's dark. It's more black, and the old one was more silver. When we take a look at the phone when the screens are started up, then we can see a difference. Because especially at the top here, we can see this little, well, dynamic island. And when it comes to the dimension, the outer, the 14 Pro Max is a tiny bit smaller. We're talking about 1 millimeter, but it's also a little bit thicker, and that is probably due to the bigger cameras. And this is something that I've never really liked. So that's why I always have some kind of case, because then it's laying flat on the table. And when it comes to the weight, they are exactly identical. They are both 240 grams. So the new iPhone 14 Pro Max is now working. And when we unlock that one, we can directly see that the screen is a lot brighter. Look at this. Look at the difference in brightness of these two screens. I believe you have noticed that as well, that the iPhone 13 Pro Max or any other older iPhones, they're pretty good when you're inside, but when you get outside and it's maybe hot and humid, or especially hot, then the screen brightness goes down, and then it goes down, and then it goes down even more. All until you have a really hard time to even see what's on the screen. So with these brighter display, it's going to be so much better. And look here, this is the always on display. So even if I lock it, there it's kind of, if you click it and it's unlocked, it's bright. And then when you click it again to lock it, it just gets darker, but you can still see all the information. I don't know if I like it. On the Apple Watch, I like it a lot because that is kind of working differently. But I think that on the phone, I believe I'm gonna turn off the always on display, because I don't want to display my phone if I don't want to display it. So to fix that, you're just gonna go into your settings, then you're gonna go into display and brightness, and then you're gonna scroll down to always on, and you turn it off. And when you turn that off, and then you click the lock button, then it's getting dark as you're used to. And I like that because I always have my Apple Watch on, and the Apple Watch is going to show me everything that is necessary, and it's going to save me some battery as well. And I can already notice that these little fancy dynamic island is doing its little job here. It's kind of expanding and contracting depending on what you're doing. And I like that feature because, then they managed to utilize that space in a lot better way. In this way, it's actually going to be part of the design. And I really like that already. I think I'm going to really appreciate that. So we were earlier talking about the screen display brightness, and the difference is actually on the old iPhone 13 Pro Max, the maximum screen brightness was 1200 nits. It maybe doesn't say so much to you, but when you compare to that, the maximum brightness is 2000 nits. On the iPhone 14 Pro Max, it is almost twice as bright. Both the old iPhone 13 Pro Max and the new 14 Pro Max are IP68 waterproof. That means that they can be submerged down to 6 meters of depth for at least 30 minutes. So what about the cameras? Well, the cameras on the new iPhone 14 Pro Max has got a really, really nice upgrade. On the old iPhone 13 Pro Max, we had a 12 megapixel camera, or actually we have 3 of them. On the new 14 Pro Max, we have a 48 megapixel main camera. And that makes a really big difference, because what Apple has done is that as a standard, when you're using the camera, you're not going to capture 48 megapixel image. You're going to still capture 12 megapixel image. But what they've done is that, imagine that you have 4 pixels like this, and all of those are capturing information and light. So what they've done is that then they merged them together, so those 4 are becoming one bigger. And that makes that one a lot sharper, and in the theory, it should give you a lot better low light capability. And that is important, because when we take a look at the different cameras we have on this iPhone 14 Pro Max, the telephoto lens, that one is still a 3x camera, or equivalent to 77 millimeters if you have a full frame camera, a standard camera. It's a little bit, it's a telephoto if you don't know what 77 is. But it's the same telephoto lens that you have on the old 13 Pro Max. And then we have the wide angle lens. That is a standard lens, the 1x one. On the 13 Pro Max, that one was equivalent to 26 millimeter. And on the 14 Pro Max, that is equivalent to 24 millimeters. That means that it's a little bit wider. You can capture a little bit more of the field that you're seeing. And another difference is that the f-stop, that basically tells how big the iris in the lens is, that one, the smaller that number is, the more it can open up. And on the old iPhone 13 Pro Max, that was 1.5. On the new iPhone 14 Pro Max, that is 1.78. That means that in theory, it should let in less light, and a smaller number on the f-stop also creates less depth of field. For example, if you take a look at me now, I'm sharp, but the background is blurry. If I have a higher f-stop, more is going to be in focus. And if I have a lower f-stop, less is going to be focused. So in the theory, the new iPhone 14 Pro Max should let in less light and have a bigger depth of field as the minimum depth of field, if it makes sense. But still, Apple claims that the low light capabilities are a lot better on the new iPhone 14 Pro Max. And when it comes to the ultra wide lens, those are both 13 millimeters on both the old iPhone 13 Pro Max and the new 14 Pro Max. The difference is that on the old one, it had an f-stop of 1.8, but on the new it's 2.2. Don't ask me why. For some reason they have increased the f-stops. And that is usually something that you don't want to do when you look at something on a lens that is expensive and good. The more expensive lenses that I have, though, are capable to have a lower f-stop, so you can let in more light, capture more low light images and everything. So Apple has done something here, because Apple claims that on the wide angle lens, the standard lens that is 1x when you use the camera, and the telephoto lens, the 3x camera or lens that you're used to, those have 2 times better low light capability. So it's suddenly twice as good in low light situations. And when it comes to the ultra wide angle lens, then Apple claims that it's suddenly 3 times better, the low light capabilities. Don't ask me why, and it's going to be so super interesting to test this out in a future video. So if you would like to see any future videos, don't forget to subscribe and like this video so you can see those tests also when I'm releasing those. And another really interesting feature on the new iPhone 14 Pro Max, that is the action mode. The action mode is a super image stabilized mode in the camera that should make the image rock steady if you are shaky. For example, if you're running or biking or skiing or doing anything else that is action, it should be a lot more stable. Another really interesting feature that Apple has invented in the new iPhone 14 Pro Max, that is a crash detection feature. If you are in a car or a vehicle and you crash and get into an accident, then the phone detects this and it's going to ask you if you are in an accident and if it should call the emergency services for you. And if you don't cancel that, the phone is going to call the emergency services for you. These can really save lives. Another thing that is not available now. It's coming in November, as Apple said, and that is that it's going to be able to communicate with satellites. This is something that you have never seen in an iPhone or any other smartphones either. And what it's going to do is that it can send text messages via satellites, even when you don't have any Wi-Fi connection, you don't have any cellular connection. It's going to be able to send text messages via satellites. And what it's going to do is it's going to ask you about a couple of questions, and then it's automatically going to send the answers to those questions to the emergency services if you really need help and you can't get a hold of anyone or anything else. Another super interesting feature is that you're going to be able to share your location with your friends if you're out hiking in a location where you don't have any cellular or Wi-Fi connection. They're still going to be able to see your location. I can see how this is also going to be able to save life and give a peace of mind for people that are out hiking, out in the nature, or they just really need to get connected to the emergency services if something happens and you are outside the original standard cell phone coverage areas. With this said, I think that the iPhone 14 Pro Max is a really good upgrade. It's expensive, still expensive, and considering that it takes bigger images, it's gonna consume the memory a lot more. So it's getting pretty expensive when you start using all that space. So the next thing you're gonna do, that is to watch this video, because that is the video YouTube recommended to watch based on your old watch history. And the video on that side, well, that is the latest uploaded video I have. Thank you so much for watching. Over and out from Sweden. Bye.